Learn Zohar, Rabbi, Michael-ben-Pesach, Portnaar, Baderech el Chasulam, on the way to the ladder. Lesson 12. Try to ask the questions that don't come out of your wish to understand with your mind, because that doesn't bring salvation. And then you will see that it's not difficult. When you read and hear the text, try to be in the present with the utmost concentration so that you will be filled with the light of the Creator. Learn to make certain movements inside yourself. Restrict your own space because of the higher, and then you will experience the higher within yourself. The spiritual doesn't have anything to do with spiritualization. The spiritual is nowhere else than where Ein Sof is. Only when you experience it within yourself, that is the spiritual. We're at the beginning of Genesis, Breshit, and then we'll continue to Adam, the sin of Adam, and we'll learn what it all means. We'll be amazed by it. And then we come to Cain. We'll learn that everything that exists in the theology with all the saints is spiritualization and not true spiritual. Don't try to hold on to propositions that existed. They were all kind people who wanted to receive it, but it wasn't the time yet to receive it. The smallest now can receive more than the great Augustine. They had to sacrifice themselves, self-punishment. We don't need that. Not that we can do everything that we want, but restriction has to be an aware restriction and not by self-punishment. We don't have anything to do with spiritualization because that doesn't give life. It's only hope for something that is outside yourself. While the hope is only within you, the hope and salvation is only within yourself, in every human being. Don't run after medieval opinions of others, as they are in our time not valid anymore. Try within yourself to say a prayer so that the text reflects back to you. You lift it, you want to receive the light, and then you'll receive the light. Because when a human being brings himself in accordance with what he learns, Zohar says, then it's without doubt that the light will come. Don't try to get a hold of it with your mind, but make yourself receptive. Listen, accept it. Also, when you don't master the Hebrew language, it doesn't matter, because I pull it down from above. It isn't mine. And then every one of us will make it. It's not difficult. Everyone in the world is scared of Zohar. But if you adopt a simple attitude towards it, then it will speak to you. But if you try to understand it with your head, then everything will close for you. The attitude from within is crucial. And Zohar, says that the cup of blessing teaches us about the attraction of the 5 Hasidim with her 5 Gurot of Nukva, as mentioned above. The whole intention is that the light from above, from Ze'ah, Zeirampin, and Bina, comes in Nukva, because she can then pass it on to the rest of the creation, to Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and finally the human being. That the cup has to rest in the 5 fingers, at which the 5 fingers are like Or Hoser, reflected light, which is Gura. She brings Gura above, and Hasidim enters. We, as a product of Nukva, do exactly the same. In our prayer, we bring above the heavy bitterness, Gurot. No human being has the power to sweeten the bitterness by himself. And then it becomes like 5 fingers, 5 gates in which the Hasidim can enter. Hasidim means mercy. You then experience mercy within your din that you bring above. And the Gurot that go above, and in there enter 5 lights of Hasidim, which are called blessings. Blessing is not yet Gadlut. It's not the moment of the perfect state of Nukva. Blessing is still Hasidim. That is to say, only in the number 10. He already told us that the number 10 is used to attract Hasidim. Just know it's like this. The why comes later and is not necessary because it will be given to you from within. They are Hagat Na, Hesed, Gura, Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod. Hagat of Ze'ah, Zerampin, are like Kahab, and Netzach is Ze'ah, and Hod is as Malchut, in regard to Ze'ah. Ze'ah, Zerampin, also has 5, and they are called Hagat Na. And the 6th is Yesod. Where do those 5 Hasidim come from? Ze'ah has 6 Firot. 5 are Hasidim, and then there is still at the bottom Yesod. Hagat is just like Kahab. In Kahab they have light Chokmah, and Ze'ah doesn't have light Chokmah. Kahab has, as it were, descended in the body, and are called Hagat. Netzach of Ze'ah is Ze'ah, and Hod is Malchut of Ze'ah, because everything has 5. Nukva, Malchut, has also 5, and also they're called Hagat Na, but all the quality of Guvra of Din. In Ze'ah, it's all or Hasidim, light of mercy. Nukva therefore needs to receive of Ze'ah masculine Hasidim. How can she then receive? In the spiritual and also in all earthly things, you receive through collided merging, zivug, the copulation. Every comprehension is a form of copulation. The whole correction is to merge with the higher, by reflecting the higher light. Just like a man and a woman at first indicate that you want to unite with the higher. If you stand on one level, you then reflect what the higher shines to you. The higher, the masculine, sees that there is a reaction, and then a communication comes forth. There is an interaction. The lower then makes itself receptive. Just like Nukva, she reflects 5 Gura, and Hasidim enters, and you get bracha, blessing. There is no other way to receive blessings. If someone takes a hard line, then he can't achieve anything. Therefore, make yourself receptive in regard to the higher. The whole correction of us, and the whole correction is based on the principle to not pull the Or Hasidim from above to below, to make zivug there. Merging, copulation, just like Adam did, and others who tried, because then you can't experience the light. But make an effort, prayer, to be pulled above, to pull your own shortages above, and cause there that Ze'ah and Malchut by your efforts merge, and then it all goes through to Ein Sof, and comes back with the blessing and the light Hasidim. And if you then preserve, dependent on the power of your prayer, then also you receive Or Chokmah in your Hasidim, and that gives life. According to the principle, we have to know principles, and then we can see the wood for the trees. That everything a lower causes to the higher in the matter of good, the lower gets also from the higher. So if we cause by our prayer that the Malchut brings it to the Zeir Anpin, and then further to Ein Sof, because we only get light from Ein Sof, and from no one else, the others only pass it on. And then we get all the good that we cause to the higher. The good comes from above, only if you call for it. This is a totally different look than what was understood by humanity in the whole history. Not that we understand it, but it's given to us now. And only the man causes the good to himself. If you call up the good in the higher by your prayer and attitude, then you also get it from above. Otherwise, nothing will happen, and there will only be suffering. And of course, you'll get indirectly something good out of your suffering, because you'll say that you've suffered a lot by something, and therefore won't do it again. This is then through negation. The whole history is nothing else than this. So he says, only in the number 10. And 10 is as 5, only that Ze'ah is written out. That is, Hagat Na, it's called like this in the body of 10 Sfirot of Ze'ah. And in the head, they have other names, Kahab, Zon. There are also 5 in Malchut, but they are of Din, strictness. Din also rules in our world, and there's nothing wrong about it. But a man has to take trouble to not choose for Din, but to raise it, as it were, Din above, and to pull Din below like Adam did, and every destructor, and then Hasidim comes from above. And again, not to pull Din below, like Adam did, and every destruction. And then Hasidim will come from above. In our world, we can't live only from Hasidim. It's wishful thinking if you think it's possible. Maybe they can crucify someone by mercy, but a man can't get life through mercy alone. There has to be Din in our world. It's created like this. We have to pull the Din, the strictness, above, because we can't live in Din. The world isn't created like this. And by our desire for the higher, Hasidim will come and enter in our Din. By our Din, we make a case, a cover, just like gates. Just like with the queen who sits in the coach or sits on the couch, and you can see on both sides guards. It's the same way with us. The guards are the strictness that we bring above, and in there enters light of mercy, or Hasidim, in the matter of powers. We expect a lot of kinds of images, spiritualization, but it's all about powers. You can attract Hasidim and continually deeper in different kinds. Every day, you can pull the Mashiach out of you. The Mashiach is in every man. You have to be Mashiach for yourself. You have to make from beneath your tough, heavy leaves continually tougher, and pull them above as Gorot, and in there light Hasidim comes, mercy. Not a prophet gives you mercy, but you give yourself mercy. Everyone has to make an effort on its own to pull the mercy to yourself, and not in the name of someone else, but in the name of yourself, your relation with the higher, the next step and nothing else. Everything is only in your inner. It's a childish attitude to think that someone else can help you. Thousands of years they try to make the human being a tamed, domesticated animal. Has the man become happier by doing it? Of course, it all goes to the ending. It's now revealed to us, and not because we are smart. The contrary. You have to give up all your cleverness, intellect, and then miracles will happen. How can I give it for myself? That's the stubborn part of us, the wish to understand with our mind while it stands in our way. We have to give it up. Everything that you have learned, I've also received higher education, became a doctor, attended technical college. I've studied all kinds of things, but I've renounced everything. Of course, nothing disappears. You can't throw it away, but it's like I've thrown it in a ditch. It doesn't mean anything to me anymore, because every wisdom in our world is nothing compared to the divine light. Nothing is asked from us except desire and continually more trust, faith, belief, trust. That is, or Hasidim. What is faith? If we would have some kind of spiritual x-rays and could see through the body, then we could see when a human being is in prayer, that something goes above from his inner, like clouds. Clouds of thick light, not corrected, with a great wish, thickness, aviyut. And in there comes thinner light, and that is Or Hasidim, light of mercy, which will soften your din, your strictness. Every day, again, and every time, another correction till it's so purified, cleaned, that what you bring above isn't heavy anymore, as Or Hasidim shines through it. And then a bit of Chokmah comes in there, and it becomes finer, more transparent. That is what we call a pleasant smell for the Creator. That is the offering. Just like in the temple when animals were offered on the altar, we don't need that anymore. Your sincere prayer is sufficient. You lay your ego, your self-love on the altar, Malchut, and then a cure comes. Everything is in our hands, and not more than 5 fingers on which the cup of blessing rests. It's a metaphor, i.e., contrary to the number 13. The number 10 means gvorot, din, that you or nukva, it's the same. Bring above, and then the 5 Hasidim come from above, and that is 10. So the number 10 is about attracting or Hasidim, light of mercy. It's actually a preparation to the true receiving of the light Chokhmah. Only Hasidim is for Malchut, and for us, not enough. Mercy is pleasant, but it's not the true reality. It's the preparation to the full-grown receiving, which is Hasidim with a bit of Chokhmah. We have said that Nukwa firstly brings 5 Gorot above. At first there are 5 tough leaves, and as a reaction she brings 5 Gorot above as a prayer, and there come 5 Hasidim. So she receives 5 Hasidim, blessings. It's like she rose up to the Ze'ah, Ze'erampin, in quality. Because if a lower rises up to the higher, it becomes as the higher. That is the law. And if a higher descends to a lower, of course not by itself, but only the outside, to help the lower, then it becomes as the lower. We're going to learn how the system in the creation works. I've searched for the answers, but couldn't find it anywhere, not in the Talmud, and etc. I was dead from the inside. I had no power anymore. I was absolutely disappointed. Religion, wisdoms, it's too good to be true. In regard to Zohar, it's all worth nothing. There is no perfection in it, as it doesn't come directly from the Creator. It's only a concealment. You have to desire more for the spiritual than for wealth, honor, power, and then it will be revealed to you. Do your work so and so. Do what you have to do, but what you do in your free time. It's like someone who doesn't have food and suddenly finds a treasure chamber, and that's nothing in comparison with what I found. I didn't want to share it with anyone because I wanted to work with it day and night, but it's given to me so that I can pass it on to others. The receipt of Hasidim, which is Chokhmah, opens our eyes. Mercy is disguised, the eyes half slumbering. It doesn't give the light of wisdom, which gives us light. And that is 13. The Nukva has received 5 Hasidim, which means that she merged with Ze'ah, which is the step higher. Because she adapted herself to the Ze'ah, he only needs Hasidim, and she came to the level of Ze'ah. She then receives Hasidim in her Gorot. And what she receives from the higher, that is the common area where they correspond to qualities. That means that Malchut climbed up in that extent of merging in the qualities. Principle, nothing disappears in the spiritual. So she still exists in her own place. Therefore you preserve all the powers that you had and get new dimensions. Ze'ah, Ze'erampin, is characterized by Hasidim. He doesn't need Chokhmah. She now climbed up to his level. He, my partner, doesn't need Chokhmah, but I do. Certain common characteristics bring you together, but you come from below and you need more than Hasidim. A great Roman regent was appointed in the country Judea, Israel, and this is also mentioned in the Talmud, that at first he was a swineherder. He was Jewish, but became Roman. He was appointed as a ruler. The Jewish people in the environment looked down on him. They despised him. He remembered that, and when he became a ruler, he put them all in their proper places. It is also written that although he was a great Roman, he felt within that he still was a swineherder. If you go up from below to above, there always remains marks of the lower. When he became a ruler and sat on the royal table, he still had an appetite for bacon, etc., just like a regular swineherder. It's the same with Malchut. She climbs the Ze'ah, where only love and Hasidim are, and she says, give me a piece of the black bread and bacon, etc. The lower needs a bit of Chokhmah, and then she feels great. Take that part of My Fair Lady. She was a florist, and she was made a lady in 3 months. She ate in London with the aristocracy, and when she was at her ease, she began talking in her old language. The The same as with Malchut. She wants something lively that Ze'ah doesn't need. He then has to pull down some Chokmah for her. He thinks it's brutal, but she wants it and needs it. He gives something from his left side, Hasidim, from the left side, but specifically from the left side. The first phase is that she, from her own position and her own powers, Gurot, Din, makes an appeal to the Ze'ah. And Ze'ah, Ze'erampin, then gives her Hasidim. She needs it. It softens, as it were, her coarseness with regard to him. She then climbs to him, because to merge with him, she has to get up the power to climb to him. When she's at the level of Ze'ah, she then has Hasidim and not her Gurot, as she masters that already. She needs Chokhmah, and she's in his level of Hasidim. She now pulls Hasidim above, just like she did with her Din, strictness. She's in mercy, and she wants something more lively. So she rose up to Ze'ah, but she isn't satisfied with only Hasidim. She also needs a bit of Chokhmah, but not too much, of course, otherwise we would not be able to see anything, and we would be in complete darkness. So it has to be pulled down with moderation and doses. So Hasidim with a bit of Chokhmah. So don't lace the liquor with coffee, but lace coffee with liqueur. Then it's pleasant. When the Nukva rises up to Ze'ah, then her environment is Hasidim, but she still needs Chokhmah. She now goes with the Hasidim above so the Chokhmah can enter there, because she, Malchut, but also we, are not able to experience Chokhmah without it being enclosed in Hasidim. If we pull down pure pleasure, rough pleasure, then we'll never experience the light, but we'll fall into sin. So she's now at the level of Ze'ah, and again she brings above Man. The light reflects, and then she can already, not Hasidim like in her own place, before she reflected Hasidim of Ze'ah, as that is the coming light to Nukva. But now she rose up to Ze'ah. Who is above Ze'ah? Bina. And she doesn't need Chokhmah. But when the lower rises up to a higher, then the whole spiritual ladder rises above. Nothing disappears in the spiritual. So the standard ladder stays always in the same place, but she's now in the position of Ze'ah, Ze'erampin. She's one step higher. Ze'erampin then goes to Bina, and Bina goes to Chokhmah. And Chokhmah can be received here. So at first Nukva rises one step above. She is then in the place of Ze'erampin. She then receives mercy of him, Hasidim. That is called bracha, to receive blessing. Therefore the Creator said to Abraham that he would be as Hasidim for the people, because the quality of Abraham is Chesed. He had achieved that through spiritual work. It's also written with regard to Abraham, everyone that blesses you will be blessed, and everyone that curses you will be cursed. Before I didn't understand a word, and no rabbi could give me an answer, but Zohar opened my eyes. What does it mean when the Creator said that Abraham would be blessed, or would be the blessing? The Creator is the power of Ze'ah, Ze'erampin, and Abraham was a man, a soul that became a Merkabah, a wagon, a throne, a chariot, in which the Creator could reside. That means that he rose up to Ze'ah, to Chesed of Ze'ah. Then a soul achieves something, then it remains the property of the whole world, because what is pulled down doesn't go away. Abraham was the first, the only, that could dress and cover the power of Chesed of Ze'erampin. And that means he could, just like Nukva, bring the powers of Gurot above, and it extended till the Sfirah Chesed of Ze'erampin. Therefore, every man who blesses Abraham, i.e. that you, by your efforts, as it were, lay yourself like an embryo in his soul, that you trust that Abraham is the father of mankind, you then unite yourself with him, as well as Jews, as non-Jews, because it's written that he will be the blessing of all mankind at all times. That means that we, by our prayer, pull our Gurot above and dress, cover the soul of Abraham. He is the carrier of the Sphira, the light Hesed, and we, as it were, connect our wagon, connect our chariot to him, and he is the locomotive. Through that, we go with our Gvorot, above, and just like Ze'ah gives mercy, Hasidim, to Nukva, like this Avraham gives in our souls. Because when a lower stands in the position of a higher, then he becomes as the higher. You then receive the light of the position you stand in. Of course, the body of Avraham fell apart, but the light that it attracted will exist forever. If you rise up to him, to that soul, then he will give Hasidim in your Gvorot, and that is called to receive blessing, bracha. And what does curse mean? That you don't rise up to receive Hasidim, the highlight, but that you pull down the light to your awkward situation, and that is a sin, because Hasidim is where Zeir Anpin is, and the unclean powers don't want mercy. 2,000 years they said in religion, mercy, and they were done, because with Hasidim, you're from one side protected from the unclean powers, but you don't receive Chokmah. From one side, it's kind of a protection. You know what I'm talking about. Do you believe in the name of... and then you get mercy. That's correct, one side. But our nature is not only Hasidim. Would it be this way, then religion would be right. It's only one phase in the steady climbing of Nukwa. In the first phase, Nukwa rises to Ze'ah, Zeir Anpin, and he then goes to Binah. That is a higher form of light, Hasidim. The next step is that Nukwa, who is in the position of Zeir Anpin and is surrounded by Hasidim, brings above Hasidim. Therefore it is said that the left 5 fingers, where the cup rests on, is the first rising. At first we hold the cup with 2 hands, and then in the right hand. So at first we reflect with Gvorot to receive Hasidim of Zeir Anpin. Then, to the right side, Hasidim. She brings above Hasidim as man, as a prayer, gates, and in there comes Chokmah. So the Nukwa makes an appeal from the position of Zeir Anpin. And then Ze'ah goes to Binah, and Binah goes to Chokmah. Zon are descendants and qua powers of Binah, and Binah is in Chokmah. Binah herself doesn't need Chokmah, but because a lower goes to a higher becomes like the higher. So she becomes Chokmah, and underneath is Zeir Anpin, who is now in the position of Binah. And Nukwa is in the position of Zeir Anpin, because everything rose one step higher. Binah, who is in the position of Chokmah, has the power to give Chokmah. Ze'ah, Zeir Anpin, has to always give to Nukwa. It doesn't matter in which position he's in. Ze'ah now gets light, Chokmah, but Binah gives a bit of Chokmah, the amount that Ze'ah can endure. Margaret Thatcher was a prime minister, and by day she was in parliament, but at home she said, Jew, 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 and like that to her little granddaughter or to her little daughter. Was that Thatcher? It's the same with Binah, who is now in Chokmah. She gives Chokmah to Ze'ah at his level. But Thatcher also didn't say to her daughter that she had given a nice speech in the parliament or about the budget. She only gives to her daughter what applies to her. It's the same with Binah. Binah gives a bit of Chokmah to Ze'ah, but he doesn't need it. He only needs Hasidim. But in the matter of creative power, he has to give it to his wife, Nukwa, because they have already a relation, and she needs Chokmah. She is serving Hatch. We'll continue in a bit with Zohar, and it will give you Chokmah in the Hasidim that I give you. We only have one lesson a week, and I'm therefore hurried to say as much as possible principal things that you need to understand. A break during the lesson is of course pleasant, I understand. You had a rough day and you want to relax a bit, talk about your family, children. Why? Because then, as it were, a valve opens. It's pleasant for your animal part. You then feel good. On the other hand, if you don't take a break, you need to stay concentrated for 2.5 hours. Of course, you can go to the toilet, etc. But don't talk about your daily problems. For you, they can seem important, but actually they are small problems, because you can't see the true reality and don't want to see it. You can't see it because you don't want to see it, and therefore you continually fall into small human problems. Therefore, if you ask me, then I'll say, come here, and try to leave all your small problems outside. What is your great gladness in comparison with Kabbalah? Nothing. What's your biggest problem in comparison with your study of Kabbalah? Nothing. It doesn't exist in true reality, only in your imagination. It's your escape from reality. There's an escape from true reality to the left and an escape to the right. The escape to religion, Jewish, Christian, Buddhism, it's an approach from the right. All Eastern teachings approach the true reality from right. It's not wrong, but you're not busy with your true reality. Of course you'll awake later, but not yet. That's a pity. If life is precious to you, then you'll say, no thank you. I want Kabbalah. I want to see the true reality. Every moment has to be dear to you, and you have to see it as a unique moment. And if you, during this unique moment, talk about something else, then you waste, at this moment, your life. You should see it this way. If you see it in another way, then you are Esau or Ishmael. Then you're busy with your outer things. Okay, let's say that you win the lottery 100 million. Then you should come here and continue the study of Kabbalah, because the 100 million is nothing for your personal progress. Or what you lose, it's worth nothing. If you see it another way, then you're not ready. But if you see it this way, then you can learn Zohar. I told you before that I needed 2 years to translate a test and put it every week, little by little, online on our website. I also need 2 years to finish Bezrat Hashem, the 21 books of Zohar, and Talmud HaYeser Sfirot. It has 16 parts. I need these 2 years to finish Zohar from A to Z. I don't learn it like they do in Israel. They only learn the Hebrew parts there. I'm not telling they can't do it. There are a few who can. But I do everything from Zohar, the Aramaic, and the Hebrew. I don't skip the Aramaic like they do. They don't have time. I have all the time for Kabbalah. So during those 2 years, I will be ready with Zohar. I will have finished it for the first time. You are never ready with Zohar, but I will then have worked out everything. At that time, you'll be ready with tests, and I'll be ready with Zohar. And I will then give you every week a part of Zohar, like with tests. Pure Zohar with the Aramaic. I will translate it for you, just as pure as I'm doing now, without fantasy, without blah blah. Zohar without the blah blah. When you learn regular Talmud every day 1 page, then it will take you 7 years. 7 years for one Talmud. And then you'll also be deceived, because after 7 years you'll ask yourself, what in God's name have I done during the past 7 years? It's great, a lot of knowledge, but you'll say, where's the Creator? I couldn't find it in the Talmud. What I want to say is that it doesn't grip you anymore. But if someone says that it grips him, then he should go and learn it. But once you have done tests after 2 years, and when you start learning Talmud, please, then you don't want it anymore, because then you want Zohar. After Zohar, you'll understand the Talmud, what it all means when it's written about a Jew stealing from another Jew, etc. You'll see the Creator behind it all. It's the same. It's the same with Zohar. If you start with Zohar now, then you will make the same mistake as I did when I started learning Talmud. Every day I felt that I was important. My intellect was developing 100%. Therefore, there are a lot of intellectuals in our world. They learn Talmud and it all comes in their head, but there is no correction. Then you have a beautiful belief. There are great rabbis who are experts in Torah and Talmud. They know a lot, but it's Jewish culture. It's great, but there's no correction. Let's say that you go to a university and want to study physics. You enter the university and say, I've read in the newspapers about a certain substance called neutrino, and I want to learn about the substance. The professor will then say, take it easy. You first have to learn regular mathematics, physics, and neutrino comes later, after 3 or 4 years. We also need 4 years, like Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag says, that you need 3 to 5 years to enter the spirituality. If you want to study the neutrino of Kabbalah, then you also need to invest a few years. It means that you can start working on it and come every day closer to the neutrino. That is our plan. That we don't keep repeating articles. Therefore, I want one of our people to go to Israel and specialize himself in the introduction of the science of Kabbalah, so he can draw on the board and I can explain. It's very difficult for me to explain to beginners because then I would be at a loss for words. There are Kabbalists who come from the left to the Kabbalah. I come from the right. Who is better? It's just a matter of what kind of soul you have. Therefore, it would be useful if someone could go there and bring something from the left side, let's say a bit of science. Who was Esav? He who believes in the mind, and that is Klipa, Esav. What is the unclean power? Only Torah is clean. Only the true reality is clean. If you approach the reality from the left, then you have too much wisdom. We can see that in the West. Wisdom, knowledge. But there is no Hesed, belief. Also the Jews in Holland are Western. They only use their head, and that is called Klipa Esau. It's the approach of the reality through the intellectual. The brilliant quality of everything that gives the mind pleasure, that is Esau. That is Chokmah. And that corresponds with the powers in the universe and the way of correction through the right, left, and the Torah. Because here is belief, but belief under knowledge. Knowledge is my belief. My belief is what I know. Then your knowledge is your pride. Look at the West. There are gigantic layers of generations of pride and arrogance. Their pedantic nature is so deep-seated that it seems impossible to remove it. And that means the unclean power of Esau. We can do everything. The sky's the limit, but only in the knowledge and not in the intuition or belief. And on the other hand, you have the right side, Ishmael. They say, I know God, and the Westerner doesn't know God. The people from the right side say to the Westerners, Americans, that they are godless. What do they mean by that? They are from the right side, and it is therefore for them easier to give up their life for nothing, for an idea, to blow themselves up. Why? Because he has belief, and for Esau, it's ridiculous to blow himself up. Why? He uses his head. That is the power of the West. Every person has within himself Esau, Ishmael, and Israel, and or Torah, or Kabbalah. We will call more names. Israel doesn't mean the people that live in Israel. Do you understand? So there are conditions, and they can change. Because if we look 500 years back, then it was the opposite. In the Islamic world was then the knowledge, for example, in Spain, while it was a dark period in Europe, Crusades. No, look. First of all, we're not speaking about history and about nations. Of course, certain nations are carriers of these powers, but also then knowledge was. Knowledge and knowledge are different things. Knowledge of civilized Arabs of the time of the 14th and 15th centuries came through belief. All their developments of linguistics, all positive science, came from them, but it came from the side of the Klipat Ishmael. We are not talking about technological progress. We're talking about the structural powers from the right and the structural powers from the left. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Western person. There is a true reality, the approach of the true reality from the left, and the approach of the true reality from the right. This is what we're talking about. Right decides the left side. Of course, within Esau, there is again Ishmael and Esau. Why? Every smallest detail corresponds with the general aspect. There are hundreds, all kinds of variations of powers. We say it this way. But here are a lot of variations of approach. Till here, there are unaccountable variations of left to the middle. And here, Michael is showing it on the board, are also unaccountable variations of souls, conditions of right to the middle. That is the goal of the creation, that the creation finally comes to salvation, and the salvation is the true reality till the Gmar Tikkun, the final correction. Right and left, they neutralize each other. It's good what you say, but it's not a balance of powers. It's not that they have to bring each other in balance, but it's about these powers growing towards the middle. And therefore you now see in the West, as an example, that they go a lot to the East. And the people from the East go to the West. But the meaning is that the left grows towards the middle, and the right grows towards the middle. They all go there. And that again finds its expression in the two powers of good and evil. I'm not talking about the good and evil as it's here, but the apparent. The one says that it's good, and the other one says that it's the other way around, because they both are, as it were, in two different sides of the truth. Therefore, they see it that way. And that is only an observation. If a man rises in his observation through all the worlds, then he brings Esau and Ishmael within himself to Israel. It's not that the right is better than the left. We'll learn later how it all works. Chokhmah means bare wisdom. So wisdom, when you learn Torah, there was a person, Balaam. He was the great wise man, the greatest wise man of the nations of the world. As far as wisdom, he was even greater than Moshe. How can that be? The Talmud says it. Before I couldn't understand it. Why? It doesn't grasp the language of the wisdom. It grasps it, but a bit allegorical. And so you can't, how can it be? Moses is here and Balaam is here, and in the name is the answer, the powers. Torah only speaks of powers. We'll talk about that later. So the Talmud says that he had more Chokhmah than Moshe, who stood in the middle. Of course, it's like this. Why? It's a bit early, but I'll try to talk about it a little bit. So what is the West and East? No balance, it's always war from within, and therefore we also see it from the outside. What does Torah mean? What does the true path mean? Not surplus chokhmah, wisdom, of a man from left, who has tremendous wisdom, bare wisdom, but not mixed with chesed, love. I can't yet explain it to you, but we're almost there. We've learned in one of our lessons, do you remember, that Malchut made a screen and then a direct light came, and that is the light of chokhmah. That is the light of the true wisdom. And what does the creation do? The creation reflects it. And that is the reflected power of the creation itself. We call it Or Hoser. And that, as it were, covers, dresses the light Chokhmah. Light Chokhmah enters the shell, and the shell forms the Chesed itself. The creation is created in the way that the true wisdom, the wisdom of the true reality, only can enter the human being when it is covered in the case, in the Hesed. Only Hesed is not enough. Why not? Because it doesn't give power. This is the secret that I've been looking for. I traveled but didn't find it. Look, when the light, all the knowledge enters, and when I confront it, I first reflect it, and that is already a power. I don't take the Chokhmah myself. Balaam, his power was that he just received pure Chokhmah, pure wisdom within himself. He just receives it without questioning if it's correct or not, if it's the right way to receive it or not. And therefore, this Chokhmah brings darkness. What is Klippah? Klippah is the unclean power, and it always asks to abuse the light, to take advantage of the light, but not in the way the light wants it, like how it is programmed to be received. It says in the program that you can't receive the light that comes from above in the original form, but it has to be, as it were, edited. It has to be edited. It has to be covered. There has to be a case by the Or Hoser, Chesed. That means that your attitude from within has to be like this, that you adjust yourself to not to receive the light of the Creator, but that you say, I want to give the Creator pleasure, affection. I want to give the Creator pleasure in everything that I do. Giving pleasure means that you want to give to Him, and that giving is the case in which a reaction can come, and in which the light of Chokhmah can enter, and that is the wisdom, Chokhmah, of Moshe, or the Torah. And if you don't do it this way, then it is Klipa Esau, or Baalam. Therefore, it is said in the Talmud that the Chokhmah of Balaam is bigger than of Moshe. Why? Because he received it in pure form, and Moshe covered it in affection, and therefore it gave up power, because it's not pure. That means that you, for example, can drink pure vodka, and others drink vodka with orange juice, and have pleasure, while the other feels drunk and uncomfortable. Therefore, the Chokhmah of Balaam is bigger, but it's not durable. The Chokhmah of Moshe is durable. By this receipt you get the eternity. It stays within you, and you get the eternity, while all the wisdom of Esau is doomed to ruin. Can you see the three powers? So we have had the three lines and the importance of the reflection, that you first say, no, I only want to give. If you say that you only want to give, then in that power in which you want to give, in that case of power in which you want to give, enters Chokhmah, and that is the eternity. Are there any questions? Yes, but inaudible, hard to hear. Balaam was asked by the king of Moab to curse the people of Israel. He knew that Balaam was capable of doing that. How could he be capable of doing that? Why could Balaam curse the Jewish people, the chosen people? Now we can see why the Jewish people are the chosen ones, because they get and Chokhmah and Chesed, and not only Chesed, as it were, belief without wisdom, but they get Chesed, giving, and they also get Chokhmah inside. They get both inside. The case is the belief, and inside the belief is the wisdom, the Or Chokhmah, that they receive in their Kelim, the true light. Therefore it is said, Mi Tzion Tetzeh Torah. Out of Tzion, the Torah will go out. Go out or enter is the same. Goes out of Tzion because they will work up, the ones that call themselves Israel and can give. And in that giving, the light Chokhmah enters. That is the whole difference. That is what the Torah speaks of. So Balaam had to curse the people of Israel. What is curse? It's useful to know the story of the Torah physical narrative. You don't have to imagine anything, but just read the story, just like Harry Potter. What does it mean? He wants to curse Israel. First of all, he had the enormous Chokhmah, and he had to in another way. I don't want to talk about astrological things, but also that he found a moment in the year, and every year certain conditions exist in which people, Jews, are in Pesach. All kinds of conditions. There are moments when the Jewish people, as it were, weakens. As it were, it seems that they weaken, because we'll learn in Kabbalah that during critical moment of qualitative change of a condition, that it doesn't happen another way than in the form of extreme weakness, almost fainting, etc. And suddenly you're another level, different, positive. We've learned that Esau from left only wants to control with the head, because when you control everything, then you are strong, but spiritually you don't progress. You don't progress in the quality of your life. You only want to have everything under control, power. Be the boss. What does it mean? Chokhmah, left, your head wants to control everything that happens in you. Your head wants to control everything that happens in you. From one hand, you have an advantage compared to the right of Ishmael, because Ishmael says, my head is nothing, my heart is for the Creator, but I only use my head. Every human being has all those powers within himself. He wants to rule over the system. If we project it to the human wishes, then we have Ishmael. If we only follow the heart, commit adultery. If someone says that he's not like this, then he can simply leave the lesson, because then he can apply for the Pope or Rabbi. So the heart only wants to commit adultery. It's naturally like this. It's not bad. We'll learn later why it's not bad, but you have to concur with this. The head wants to rule over the heart. Then we have two rulers in one system. The head says, I'm the boss. He knows that the heart only wants to commit adultery, and he says, no, I'm going to control that. And I'm going to control it so that I don't feel what's in there. Break the adulterous heart. I'm going to control it. That's not good. And the other side is also not good. Kabbalah means that there is a tuning between that and that. Everything comes first from above in the head of a partsuf, the spiritual, and then it slowly comes in the toch, the body. First it comes in the head. Everything that exists out of three parts: rosh, head, toch, middle, and sof, the end part. There always has to be a coordination. The head has to be at the right moment ready to admit. In every condition, the head has to, during a critical moment of change of one condition to another, at that moment, the human being does it in a good way, then he weakens. His head, as it were, weakens. At that moment, during every condition, also in our daily conditions, when you go from one condition to another, it works in this way. You let your head weaken. An enormous power comes at you. That comes as a sign of the new light, the new step, and that is enormous, big, and it comes in your head. And then your head, as it were, surrenders. It sleeps, as it were. It's always a bit latent. At that moment, the heart starts to receive that light. It then comes in your heart, and that is the moment as if you're fainting. As a result of the interaction between the head and the heart, a new condition comes. Impulse. At which the human being comes in a completely different level, a totally different human being. A new element comes in you. The light then enters in you. Light that you and all generations before you could never have observed. All the generations that saw the Creator tete-a-tete on Mount Sinai. Also, they could not achieve a fraction of what we're capable of achieving now, because we're the generation of the days of the Mashiach, the Messiah, the last generation. That means that it still can last a few generations. A generation doesn't mean 40 years. Generations come back again in other appearances. Every generation continually progresses. So because he had so much knowledge, he knew the moment that when the Jews were weak, the moment when they would come to a newer, higher state condition. He knew that Jews have moments in which they are weak, but he didn't know Torah, because he was from the left. Torah says that during those moments when Israel is weak, structurally weak, change, that they are during that moment on the turn between one condition and a higher condition. He didn't know Torah and thought that it was a condition when Israel is weak, and that means that God is then apart from them. And he thought, oh, now I can. He made all those korbanot, sacrifices, to break through the case of love of the Creator for the Jews, and, as it were, to cause a short circuit in them, to pull the power down, to cause a short circuit, as it were, that they would receive an enormous light. By all those sacrifices, he wanted to pull an enormous light down so that it would break through Israel. This way, they would be cut off from their Torah. So their kilim would break, and they would not have power to defeat the Moab people. Because the Creator said, you have to break through all the 7 nations of Palestine, Israel, the land of Canaan. We'll see later what those 7 nations mean. 3 of the Creator, which we can't touch, because they are those 3. And here we have 7 Sfirot: Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. Israel had to work up the power for every layer, build up the case separately for Chesed, and then the light can enter. Then they had to work up a case for Gvura, and another light would enter. This way for all the 7 corrections, till they could completely enter the land of Israel, because that is the land, Israel, Canaan. Later it becomes Israel. That is the land where Israel should come, and that he wanted to break. How did he do that? He told the king of Moab, look, I've tried this part. 7 Sfirot, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. in regard to the story. And here are the legs, and you know where the wishes are between the legs. And what he did, advised the Moab people. And what did he advise the Moab people? I could not curse the people of Israel. It did not work. But what I advise you is to tempt them with your wives. Leave your wives, the people of Israel, and they will, as it were, commit adultery, have sexual intercourse, etc. What does the Torah speak of? Sof, that are the wishes from within. So he told them, I could not break them here. Let the light come to Sof without them being prepared, without them being corrected. Because committing adultery with the wives of Moab, Jews, Israel, had then a lot of creating powers in themselves. And so the best advice was, let them commit adultery with the perverse women of Moab. It doesn't mean the wives of Moab, but the powers. Torah always speaks of powers and not of nations and so on. That was the advice. And it happened this way. A huge plague came, and 4,000 people died. And Pinchas came, a great high priest, that with a stick. A long story. It's all about the powers. It's all about the powers that I speak of. So if you know the three powers that are in the creation, the left, right, and middle. Middle is Torah, Kabbalah, Israel, Moshe. I could give more names. The name is a reproduction of the comprehension of that power, that the comprehender. The comprehender gives a name to that he comprehends. We'll see in the Zohar what this all means. Zohar describes certain concepts, and in there is a description of those powers in the formula of the powers that exist. I don't know what to tell. Every Thursday, the day of course, I pace up and down and do other things, and then I don't know what I will say. And therefore, on one hand, it is maybe good, but on the other hand, look, that is also Kabbalah, but the practical side of Kabbalah. So we also need someone from the left, like the left Kabbalists do. Very scientific and systematic. That appeals to people, especially people who work with their head. And then it's difficult for them to come outside their head. They know everything about Sfirot, but still it is difficult for them to approach Torah. I'm a man from right. Of course, I always have something from left, and therefore I can't do it in a different way. Therefore, 600,000 souls approach the true reality from their own side. So maybe 300,000 here and 300,000 here. It would be good if some of us, who's more of the side of Esau, there are enough Esau's in this country, could go to Israel and tell you the systematical Kabbalah. I would then sit next to you and talk about Torah, other things that you're still not able to take on. What did the people in this world do? We're not speaking about good or evil, it's just development. They've cut, as it were, the reality in fragments, because they couldn't see the reality as a whole. Therefore, different teachings came to life, by belief here or by knowledge there. People ask if Kabbalah is a science. Yes, if we say that one leg of the Kabbalah is intellectual, then we say that Kabbalah is scientific. If we take the second leg, we know that the Creator created the world on two legs. Zelo mazeh, the one towards the other. If we take the second leg, then we can say that Kabbalah is belief. If there is only knowledge and no belief, then it means that he didn't yet come to belief. And Kabbalah, or the true reality, is belief above knowledge. That means that the symbiosis of two. Belief above knowledge means that there is belief and knowledge. There is knowledge, but there's also belief above knowledge. That means that both exist, and towards the middle, a symbiosis is made. Just like what a physicist does. Split elements, an enormous power, but you can then merge them together. Then an enormous power comes to life. A last remark. Why are the people of Israel chosen? The whole right side came in the Jewish people by the Patriarch Abraham. He introduced the quality of belief in this world. Before him, it didn't exist. Abraham had 100% belief without questioning what it all is. He didn't have left. He, as it were, chopped it off and completely united himself with the Creator. Only right. That is Abraham. His quality is Hesed, love, safety, mercy. That is Abraham. That is the first leg of which the Jewish people came to life. But that is not enough. It is right of the reality, but it's a good start. So at the ground of the Jew is always Hesed. Why? Abraham is the first patriarch. If a Jew digs deep within himself, then he'll find love, Hesed, because he comes from Abraham. Then his son Yitzchak came. His power is Gura, resistance, but good resistance, by knowledge. Knowledge of the Creator and building up within himself powers that Abraham didn't develop. Abraham was love, and this is power. Western man, everything is in it, but he built everything up within himself. He built all the other powers as opposing power of Hesed. Gura, enormous power, enormous knowledge, as opposing the power of love. Love without knowledge is adultery. The third father, Yaakov, came, and from him began the Jewish people. Yaakov has Tiferet, magnificence. He has the two. Yaakov introduced for the first time the quality of the fear of the Lord, Yirah. If my people don't practice the fear of the Lord, then on what is it based on? Yaakov is perfection, is the true reality. Experiencing the true reality is Yaakov. The most important quality of Yaakov is fear of the Lord. What is that? From his father Yitzchak he took severity, though din, and from his grandfather he took love. He merged them both together, and that makes fear of the Lord. And not what we call fear of the Lord, because we don't even know what that is. We can see now that the fear of the Lord is the basis for comprehending the true reality. If you want to progress in your life, and if your life is precious to you, and you want to get the utmost out of it, then you have to grow the fear of the Lord within yourself. Learn what it is. Awe. Awe for who? For the greatness of the power of the absolute unselfishness in the universe. You have to fear that because you are worth nothing in comparison to it. See yourself and feel truly that you are nothing in regard to the eternal power. David said, I am a worm and not a man. David, the king of who the Mashiach will come. You have to grow the fear of the Lord within yourself. You have to learn what it is because it is the basis. If you don't have the fear for the Lord in everything that you learn, then it will not help you. If you learn Talmud without the fear of the Lord, then it's absolutely nothing. An enormous punishment will come. Of course, every Jew has fear of the Lord, and then love comes. And also when love comes, well, I now almost talk in religious terms because I can't yet talk with you in Sfirot. If I show you it in Sfirot, then you will see things, but it will come. Immediately after Easter, we begin with the 10 lessons of the Kabbalah. Try now to read it as much as you can. The great professor who visited me said that we'll correct it together. It will be a great translation. It's the basis of the Kabbalah to understand to begin with. If you can see the whole story till the goal of the creation, then we can. I can now see that I am capable of giving you that after Easter. For me, there was a problem to give that, because I can't give like other teachers do. They give it in a sober way. They can draw all the words. They know them all by heart. I can't even dream of doing that, to do that like them. 21-year-old boys know all the drawings. But where is the fear of the Lord? You can't go a step further and you won't receive anything. You can read thousands of books, including Zohar, but it will be all against you. You can't touch Zohar if you haven't built up the fear of the heaven, Yirat Shamayim, because only then you can touch Zohar. Otherwise, you touch something that is a fire and flame, a knife that cuts on both sides. It is dreadful if you see the truth, even when it's peeping through a small hole. All the best until the next lesson.